Welcome to Dietitian with a Mission. I'm Taylin, dietitian from Tacoma, Washington. Today our featured ingredients are beets. I've got 3 recipes for you, each featuring these beautiful red beets. Let me introduce you to our ingredients. We've got tricolor quinoa, a handful of green onions, whites trimmed, some parsley, flat leaf parsley, a lemon, cranberries, and pistachios. And of course, our beautiful beets. We're going to start by washing our quinoa, so just dump it into a sieve and wash it with some cool water. This gets rid of the acid layer on the outside of the quinoa, making it less bitter. To cook the quinoa, add 2 cups of water to a small pot, place that on medium heat and bring it to a boil, and then add your quinoa to the pot. You're going to cook it similar to rice, where once it gets to a boil, you'll turn it on simmer. Don't forget to salt your quinoa. We need to remove the greens from our beets. So to do so, you're just going to take the greens at their root and the beet itself and twist. That will easily remove them. Save these greens for our next recipe. Give the beet a good rinse under some cool water, and then grab a vegetable peeler and peel the beet skin off under cool running water. Doing it under cool running water prevents the beet juice from splattering all over the kitchen, all over yourself, and staining everything. Granted, your hands will still be a little stained, but it will come off with soapy warm water. The next step is to shred the beets. If you have a handheld grater, you can use it. It will take a little bit longer. If you have a box grater, you can take the top and then use your vegetable holder, or just take your hand and run it along the grater. Ideally, you would have a food processor with a grating feature. Regardless of how you do it, shred 2 beets. By this time, your water should be on a boil and you can turn it down to cool. And then we're gonna get our parsley ready. So remove the stems and you can give it to your dog or save it or just put it in your compost. We will then bunch up the parsley leaves and chop them finely. Make sure you tuck in those fingernails so you don't accidentally cut the tips of your hand. My best friend Jessica is helping me along with the cooking because I did not feel very well on this day. So you're going to chop your parsley in all directions so that the large leaves turn into really small leaves, and then add it to your bowl of shredded beets. Next is to chop your green onions. Now feel free to use the whites if you like a strong oniony flavor. I wanted something a bit more mild, so we're just using the greens, and it's about half of a bunch here, which yields a couple of tablespoons. Toss that with the beets and the parsley and add in some pistachios and some cranberries. But you can use really any nut and any dried fruit you'd like. Our dressing is very simple. It's a 1/4 cup of olive oil and the juice of a whole lemon. You can use a lemon juicer or just squeeze it and catch any seeds or take any seeds out with your hand. To give the dressing a little bit of sweetness, you can add 1 to 2 tablespoons of jam or maple syrup or honey. Of course, you want to add a few pinches of salt and pepper, and what I didn't show here is some Dijon mustard to help emulsify the dressing. By now, your quinoa should be well cooked. The white sprouts in the middle of the quinoa should have popped out. So we're going to let that cool and add half of our dressing to our mixture of our vegetables. Take some spatulas or tongs and give it a nice zhuzh until it's well incorporated. Once the quinoa has cooled off a little bit, go ahead and add it to the rest of your vegetable blend. Don't forget to add the remaining dressing as well, and then give it all a good mix. Now, this has protein in it, but if you'd like to add some animal protein, you can top it off with chicken, fish, or what Jessica did, feta cheese. She really enjoyed it, even though she doesn't like beets, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Next up, simple beet greens, one of my favorite recipes. So with your beet greens from your 2 beets from your previous recipe, you're gonna gather those, wash them well, and then use as many beet greens as possible. We ended up using the greens from 2 bunches of beets, not 2 beets, but 2 bunches. Once those are washed really well, you're gonna bring a small pot of water to a boil, and then add your beet greens to that pot of boiling water. I gave it a good coarse chop. The beet greens don't need to be small pieces. They just need to be, bite-sized pieces. You're gonna make sure all of your greens are submerged. Give it a good toss in the water, and then you can let it boil for about 3 minutes with the lid off. Now my husband's helping me here, and what he's doing is getting 2 cloves of garlic, and he's just gonna smash that to loosen the skin so that he can peel the skin of the garlic off easily. And then he's gonna dice that up. If you wanna save yourself the step, you can just buy pre-minced garlic and add 2 teaspoons of that. To get rid of the garlicky scent on your hands, rub your fingers on stainless steel. It could be the sink like Luis did here, or you could use a pan, but I'm telling you it works. Next, you're gonna get a bowl of ice cold water ready because we're gonna remove the greens from the boiling water and add them into the ice cold water. This process is called blanching, where you cook a vegetable for a short amount of time and then submerge it into ice water. And what the ice water does is it stops the cooking process. It prevents the greens from getting too soft, too like olivey color, and it just kind of captures it at its current cooked state. Next, heat up a skillet on medium heat and douse some olive oil on your skillet. Once your olive oil gets warm and you coated the pan well, we're gonna toss in a teaspoon or so of red chili flakes. Now this is optional, but I find that the spice is really enjoyable. Then you're gonna take your 2 cloves minced garlic and add that to the oil as well. After about 1 to 2 minutes, it should become really fragrant without burning. And at that point, you can add your greens. Be careful here because the water from the greens with the oil and the heat of the pan can make some snap, crackle, pop. So just be careful. You're just gonna saute that up for, again, another 3 minutes at max, just so that the flavors are well incorporated and the greens get warm. And then you wanna salt it well. And at the very end of the cooking process, after you've added pepper too, you're just gonna take half a lemon. Squeeze it over your hand so that you can catch seeds. And if you want to be extra, you can take the lemon zest and toss the zest of the lemon into the greens as well. But I found the juice was plenty. And folks, that's it. Give it one more good mix and then get your plate out and use it as a side dish for your protein, or just eat the whole darn plate like Jessica and I did here. That's it. I hope you enjoy. Okay, last but not least, beet brownies. Look at these beautiful beet brownies. I promise you, it's a great way to incorporate some beets for non-beet lovers. So we gotta cook this beet. There's so many ways you could cook your beet. My preferred way is to wash it, peel it underneath running water, chop it up into squares, and then roast it in an air fryer. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. But other recipes call for you to take a whole beet, wrap it in foil with some olive oil, and pop it in the oven and roast it for an hour. But I don't like heating up an entire oven for one beet for a whole hour. It seems like a lot of use for energy. So I just use my air fryer for 30 minutes. Now we're gonna make buttermilk. If you eat dairy, you can just buy buttermilk, but if you don't, you can take soy milk and add a drop of apple cider vinegar, and that will turn your milk all curdly because it will coagulate the proteins, and you've got homemade vegan buttermilk. Ta-da! So we're gonna do that with about a half a cup of soy milk. Next, we've got 2 eggs, a half a cup of chocolate chips, 1 1/4 cups of white sugar, a cup of cocoa powder, a cup of whatever flour you use. I'm using like a gluten-free nut blend, baking powder, salt, vanilla, and a half a cup of unsalted butter. You can use dairy-free, plant-based butter as well. So once your beets are done cooking, you can see what mine looked like after 30 minutes in the air fryer. You're going to take that with your half a cup buttermilk and add it to your blender. You can see how it got all jiggly and curdly, just like real buttermilk. It really makes the brownies moist. You're gonna pulse it in your blender until you get this nice pink paste. So I've got a cup of beet puree. Next is to melt our butter. So chop up your unsalted butter into squares, put it on a low heat flame in a pot, and while that's melting, you can whisk eggs as I did in the background. You're gonna need to mix your butter for quite some time. It's gonna take about 5 minutes to brown. That's what we're doing here, we're browning the butter. So you see that it gets really bubbly. There are no brown specks right now, but after a couple minutes, it's gonna go from this bright yellow, bubbly color to all of a sudden having these brown specks on the bottom. And it happens like that. The bubbles get really tiny, really foamy, and boom, it turns brown. You can see those browned proteins from the butter down at the bottom of the pan. So at this point, you want to immediately remove it from the heat and keep stirring it so that it doesn't burn, okay? Add your sugar and your cocoa powder and mix together. At this point, the batter looks kind of weird. It looks like mud, but I promise you, it's all a part of the process. Once you stir in your 2 scrambled eggs, of course you want to make sure that it's not too hot because you'll cook your eggs. Your mixture is going to start to look like pudding. At that point, you can add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract and your 1 cup of beet puree. So here it's looking really beautiful, really creamy, really rich, like brownie batter should. And I think by the time you're done incorporating your beet mix, it's really reminiscent of red velvet cake. So this is like a natural food dye if you wanted to top this with some cream cheese frosting and make it a red velvet cake. At this point, you can add your flour mixture, and now it looks like straight on brownie batter. Add your cooking spray to your ceramic baking dish, or if you're going to use a metal baking dish, line it with parchment paper. And then top your brownie mix with about 1/2 cup of chocolate chips. Granted, this is optional, but I think it adds a nice extra chocolatey kick. You're going to bake it in your oven at 325 degrees for 30 minutes, and voila, beautiful beet brownies.